Welcome to Seminar Sunday, District 21's weekly episodic webinar series. This evening, we are covering summer meetings, the great things that you can accomplish by meeting throughout the summer in your Toastmasters Club. My name is Michael Bound. I am the Program Quality Director with District 21 Toastmasters, and it is an extreme honor to be your host for this evening, a special Mother's Day edition of Seminar Sunday. To kick it off, I'd like to remind everyone this is, in fact, a weekly episodic webinar series. We have tons of great topics coming up. As you can see, we have Leading by Example next week, followed by some fantastic topics as we head towards the end of the program year on June 30th, finishing up with one final Seminar Sunday on your path to Distinguished Toastmaster with 1 year of the traditional program left. It'll be a great topic to cover off as well. But going back to this evening's topic, summer meetings. It's something that I encourage everyone to jump in and feel free to share their thoughts, comments, concerns along the way. I like to make these as interactive as possible. Feel free to unmute yourself at any point and jump in and throw a thought in or a question, or you can also take advantage of the chat throughout our episode. We will be leading this through to 10 o'clock Pacific time. We're 9 o'clock right now, 9:02. We could finish a little early as well if there's not a lot of questions. So totally, you are in the driver's seat just as much as I am as the facilitator here, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. What are we going to accomplish? Well, we're going to talk about summer meetings, including some of the benefits of holding meetings in the summer. We're going to brainstorm some of the ways that we can make them fun, keeping momentum moving. One of the biggest challenges we face when we don't meet in the summer, of course, is that loss of momentum and then trying to pick it back up and go forward again when we convene in September. So that is kind of the main objectives. Throughout it, though, we will certainly find that we learn lots of other great things, and we'll see where we go. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about a flashback in my experience with summer meetings, just so we can start off by sharing some of the challenges we can have if we stop meeting. When I took on the role of division director a couple of years ago now, one of the clubs in the division stopped meeting from mid to late June through to mid-September or so. So they took the whole summer off and did their thing. They were a relatively remote community. They're not far from the city, but they're also a very I guess a farming-oriented community, you could call them. So the mentality is very much, they're out in their gardens and doing whatever through the summer months. Winter months, they're coming together and practicing their communication and leadership skills. On paper, sounds great. So that was one of the early things that I noticed, though, is they were the only club in my division that actually stopped meeting for the summer. I understand there's a lot of other clubs that do halt for the summer, particularly in District 21 in our interior clubs. A lot of them also stop for the summer. Similar mentality there, perhaps, a lot more outdoor activities. This club just happened to be probably, maybe not the closest, but within a similar commute distance from my home. There's 2 or 3 clubs that were relatively close. And that club, I liked the atmosphere the most because it's something that was relatively relaxed, informal. They had a nice break where they actually made tea and that type of thing. So it was really just a very homely feeling, that club. And I loved it. I had been to the club maybe twice in my time prior to serving as division director. So the topic then, of course, of the club came up. And what do we do with this club? Because I had even thought about joining it. But then the challenge was always, well, wait a second, they stop all summer long, and I'm going to pay for 6 months dues, April through to September, but I'm going to get less than 4 months benefit out of that. At least that was one angle of looking at it. And as a result, I never joined. And it wasn't just, it wasn't the financial, it was just the value. It's like, why am I going to pay for a full term and not get that when you guys are going to stop? And then how many people are going to come back in September that were there in June? And how many people are just going to forget all about Toastmasters and find another activity over the summer that tends to go right through to, whether it be through the fall or year round as well. And that club, I think, paid dearly for that decision. In the end, they ended up closing, unfortunately, not right after that or anything. It was a couple of years down the road. This past year, actually, they closed. A really unfortunate thing to see because that club had so much potential. And I think that the summer, I'm not going to say was the only barrier that they came across. Obviously, being relatively remote was definitely a little bit of a challenge when it came to recruiting of members. But it was a contributing factor because at a minimum, if they met year round, I would have joined that club for sure. No question about it. But because they chose not to meet in the summer, I personally decided I didn't want anything to do with the club. So just something to think about, that how many people, who cares about Michael Bound, but how many Michael Bound type characters do you have in the community when your club decides to stop meeting, who say, wait a second, I'm not going to get a full value out of this, or I want to work, I want to do speeches in the summer. That's actually a better time for me because, my workload at work is less because a lot of people are on vacation, or whatever the case happens to be. There's lots of us, we all have summer activities, no doubt about it. But there is some people that may find it beneficial because you're going to get, more projects completed, for example, in the summer because there's less people attending, or, a whole range of reasons that we'll try to uncover through this. So that's my personal story about it. And ever since then, I've been on a kind of a, I guess a soapbox, you could call it, trying to encourage clubs to meet year round, even if you decide to reduce your frequency or change it up and do different style meetings. At least you're getting together and keeping that connection alive at a very minimum, keeping the connection alive through the summer months, and not just, June 30th rolls around and you don't know these people anymore until September 1st. That's where we lose people along the way. And then, September is an awkward time because you're also trying to collect dues for the October 1 renewal period. So it's really important to keep momentum through the summer. That's my soapbox. Does anyone else have any similar experiences that they want to share? It's okay if you don't, but I just thought in case anybody does, I'm happy to hear it and we could share it.
This is Sean. I belong to a club that used to take every second week off in the summertime. So during the regular during the regular year, they had every Tuesday night, but during the summer they went every second one, and it wasn't bad. And I know that when I was on a club executive, it was nice to have that little bit of a break every second week, but it was so disruptive at the end of the summer to being able to get back up to speed and then to run club contests and to get the swing of things, getting your membership back up in place because of the drop off that happens naturally, and then trying to get that all back in place. It was such a panic to get everything back in place that I don't think it was worthwhile. So one of the things I decided, or I would have decided for the club if I could have, was, and they eventually did decide to suspend having that every second week and just go every week in the summertime. And it made it much easier to manage it and to have that flow. And people have things going on in the summertime. That's great. They don't have to come to every meeting. You don't have to feel obligated to come to every meeting. And they did have some fun things. Instead of having a regular meeting, they would have a picnic or something. And that was great, so that you could still have that regularness of the meetings and yet not be as stressful as having to put on a full show.
Right. So, and just to be clear, your club went from meeting weekly to twice a month in the summer, and then back to weekly in September, and that was the disruption.
Correct, and they have since suspended with that bi-weekly in the summer and just go meet every week.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. Any others?
Hey, it's Jim here. At our corporate club, we meet every second Wednesday as it is, and last summer it was really hard to get people to attend. They just seem to have their minds elsewhere, and some people said, "Oh, well, you know, we tend not to run the club that much in the summer." I'm on the executive of our club this year, and we talked about going to every 3 weeks in the summer, and we ended up saying to keep it at every 2 weeks. But I fully expect some meetings to not have a full complement of roles being filled.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very likelihood, actually, is that you're going to find you're in a position where not every role is filled, and maybe it's even skeleton. You've got just a number of people that show up. I think the other thing, and Josanna's mentioned this as well in the chat, that a lot of clubs meet every other weeks, but she finds that confusing, whether they're meeting that week or not. They just take 2 weeks off, and just with that little break, then back to normal. Works great in their case, and I do agree, because I'm seeing the concern that Sean's raised. I'm hearing the concern that you're raising as well, Jim and Josanna. And one of the things that I think we always have to remember is not just the club members, but the guests as well. If you change your structure all of a sudden, you have to consider, all right, so let's say we're meeting every other week. Is there posters out in the community or around the workplace, in your case, Jim, that say you meet these weeks or every week, or whatever the case happens to be? Does the Toastmasters International website show you meeting weekly or this or that? Because that's the last thing you want, is for a guest to walk up and oh, the doors are locked, or there's nobody there, or whatever, and they're expecting a meeting, because you've lost a potential new member there and given them kind of a sour taste of Toastmasters. Like these guys don't even show up to their meetings. So that is really critical as well. Taking a 2-week break is perhaps a happy medium, but still there's some risk there if it's not well advertised to potential guests that, hey, we're taking this extra little break, because summertime is a time that people can still come around. It's typically is a bit of a tough time to recruit people, because obviously lots going on in summer typically, but that doesn't mean that there's nobody coming that could be a new member. So thank you all for sharing that. And this topic is really linked as well with the webinar we did last month on summer markets, and the idea of getting ourselves out into different things to promote. And this is some of the images I shared at the time, where there's clubs that go and they've done the summer market thing. They've done events in malls, parades. That's up in northern BC, and our friends in District 96, or even on Vancouver Island there, they did a thing on the beach in Parksville. It's not a sand castle per se, but it's the Toastmasters logo and our tagline in the sand. Kind of a fun thing to get together and do. So I encourage you, if you haven't seen that one, to kind of go back and have a look at that. And even I don't know in your case, Jim, if there's any type of workplace fair about different things that are going on or anything like that you can take advantage of as well. But summertime is a common time of year when there's different things going on that you can take advantage of to help promote your club, or at least Toastmasters clubs in general. And I don't want to talk about that much, but certainly we do have some folks that sometimes focus a lot on their club, but really the benefit is universal. Like if you go and join a Toastmasters club here, or you join a club in Brazil or Europe or India or anywhere in the world, you're going to get a good educational program and the same educational program. So certainly when somebody comes to a booth like this, or table that you've got set up anywhere for any reason, it's always good to make people aware of what Toastmasters offers and help them find the club that's going to work for their needs. Because let's say you meet at I don't know, 7 a.m. on Wednesdays, and that the person that's interested has a yoga class, then if you're not giving them other options, then you're basically saying, sorry, you can't join Toastmasters. Where you could say, hey, you know what, you're meeting 7 a.m. on Wednesdays, that's when our club meets, but there's a club down the road that meets at noon on Wednesdays, or whatever the case happens to be. So that's another soapbox topic for another time, I suppose, but it's just something to think about when these events are occurring. So what about your club and their summer meetings? So we talked a little bit about it just a few moments ago, the idea of frequency. I definitely want to hone in on frequency. I want to talk about what the meetings could look like in terms of structure and everything, because I think this is our real chance to make the meetings fun, perhaps a little bit more casual than they may be in the winter or fall or spring, and just keep that fellowship. That's what I'm going to keep mentioning through the rest of this webinar, really, is fellowship. And that is the most important thing that we keep over the summer. So we always have education, and we should always have fellowship. I know Pat Johnson, past international president, has shared this story with me and many others around the world about how she went to a club in Texas, a Toastmasters club meeting, and I think this was while she was international president or shortly thereafter, and they were playing cards. So don't go that casual. I mean, we are still trying to create an educational atmosphere where we're providing communication and leadership growth for our members. And guests certainly want to see that as well. They've walked through the door because they have a need that they see in their educational journey. That being said, you could, outside the club meetings, still have some events like that, and that could be beneficial to say, hey, you know what, let's go bowling on Saturday as a club, or let's go to the beach, or let's have our meeting on the beach if you're nearby a beach. And that way you're having a change of atmosphere, a change of feeling, and keeping that connection, because that's going to help you retain members as well. If, Jane Doe feels like she fits into the club and she's learning things, she's got good friends in the club, she's not going anywhere. But of course, the opposite is true as well. If the club is not having great meetings in the summer, they're not fun, they're stale, boring, getting canceled because nobody wants to attend, etc., that's where your club could easily find itself either dropping down in membership significantly to the point your quality meetings are suffering, or even it could fold. So, which would be tragic to see. It's very sad to see some clubs close that a year ago were really serving their members, and today, unfortunately, they've shuttered. So, when it comes to your club, you can do so much. Like we've kind of alluded to, meeting on your regular schedule is definitely ideal. If you meet twice a month, keep that up. If you meet weekly, keep it up. Don't reduce the frequency of your meetings if you can avoid it. If the club is really hesitant and they're fighting tooth and nail, they're like, there's no way we can keep up the pace. Keep challenging them, and obviously don't let it become a huge issue, but keep pushing it and point out the things that we've talked about already this evening. The fact that guests could still come because they've seen a poster somewhere that's, whether that be in the lunchroom or whether that be, hanging up at a coffee shop down the road. They may show up. That's one issue. And the other is that loss of momentum that you'll experience regardless, even if you keep the meetings through the summer. But like Sean said, when you start meeting regularly again in September, it was a little bit chaotic. Even though you hadn't stopped, there's still that difference all of a sudden because the pace is changing. What you're used to has changed again. So that is absolutely a key ingredient to try and keep things going. And you know what? If 5 people can make some of the meetings in the summer, that's fine too, because of course they're not going to have as good of an experience as 20 people being in the room, but they will still have an experience that they'll be able to support each other. They'll be able to deliver speeches, continue along in their educational program. And I was actually reading, when I was reflecting a little bit and preparing for this, about why to join a Toastmasters club in the summer. And it was funny because the first two reasons, of course, were because you may have less work, resulting from maybe a lot of people being on vacation at work, or I guess if you work at a school, you have July and August off. And then there was the other one that you may have more work because people are on vacation. And then maybe you need a break from work to go to Toastmasters and be able to do something a little different. So that was kind of funny to read those, two opposite reasons. Yeah, okay, because you need a break from work, or because you got nothing to do at work, basically, for lack of better terms. So there's always that. But also, it's the third reason was there's a chance for you to move forward in your educational program. So maybe in the rest of the year, especially if you've got quite a number of members, or you don't have a chance to have a lot of speeches on your agenda, well, in the summer, because more people are away, the likelihood is you can get on the agenda more often. So if you, let's say, for example, you wanted to move at a really good clip through the educational program. So during the bulk of the year, you're doing a speech a month. That's really what you want to do. You just want to fly through. That's your goal. You would do more often if you could. So once a month you're speaking. Maybe in the summer you can do it twice a month because there's just that much more opportunity to speak. Or more than likely, it's you're not speaking enough the rest of the year. Maybe now in the summer months you can speak once a month. So certainly there's that benefit as well. And sorry, Josanna, I hadn't noticed you had put a comment in here as well. Just flipping back to that now, we occasionally meet on Saturdays for a nature walk and snack at a bistro. The members really enjoy it. It's purely social, not meeting related. And exactly, and I think that's just something I'm going to mention again down the road. Again, getting back to that fellowship of it doesn't have to be that you're always working the educational program. There's definitely opportunities to have social, and it can be optional. It should be optional, really. You could say, you know what, I'm planning on going on a hike Saturday at 11 a.m. If you want to come, meet me here. And maybe nobody will come, or maybe half the club will be there. But that's a purely social event, and keeping that kind of separate from the Toastmasters meeting is nice because that's purely focused on fellowship, and that's building more community within your club. Or you could invite neighboring clubs as well and kind of make it even a little more fun then, because you're getting to know some people from the club down the road as well, and just sharing ideas. So maybe something about, hey, where our club is doing this comes up, and then you're like, oh, our club should try that. So that's certainly one thing. The summer meetings frequency is really important. I've put this picture up of a picture in Parksville as well, on Vancouver Island in Division C there. This is they've got together for a barbecue. They're having a Toastmasters meeting. So they have changed the venue, which of course you could argue that's still a bit of a risk for the potential guests because they may not know the location change. But you publicize that. You could hang up a sign even at the regular meeting room that, hey, here's where we're meeting, or this week we're having a special meeting off-site. Please come next meeting. Whatever the case happens to be. But it's a nice way to combine the educational program. So you're doing your speeches, you're doing your table topics, you're doing evaluations, you're outdoors, and then you add in that social aspect. Hey, you know what? After the meeting, I'm going to flip some burgers. Or perhaps halfway through the meeting, you know what? We're going to take an extended break. We're going to have lunch, dinner, whatever happens to be, and then we'll carry on. Or I'm going to start cooking while you guys are starting out with your table topics, whatever it happens to be, and it becomes a totally different venue. Have any of you ever done an outdoor meeting? I've done it, and it's been an incredible experience. It was just such a different feeling to be standing in somebody's backyard delivering a speech.
This is Sean. We've done quite a few different clubs have done it, and I think the picnic is one of the ones that we like to do. And then you have to have some special events that you do there, and it doesn't have to be typical Toastmaster stuff. Like you don't have to have a prepared speech, or you don't have to have table topics, but you do have some fun and try to do things that are communication oriented. So I've enjoyed that. One club that I belong to now ended up having the new officer installation had a picnic, and that was kind of fun too. And they invited a bunch of other They invited other clubs to participate in the picnic, and they got to. So we had the numbers. We had some good numbers.
That's a really good point, actually, and that brought another flashback to me of a club in Victoria, Club 331, which is called Rise and Shine. It's actually the home club of past international president Pat Johnson. They, in July a couple of years ago, had a social event where they actually went lawn bowling, and they did their officer installation there. So they had their area and division director attend and install them as club officers, and then did the lawn bowling. So a really unique thing that I certainly wouldn't think of on a regular basis, and I suspect the majority of you probably wouldn't think of, oh yeah, we're going to go lawn bowling with our Toastmasters club. But what a cool thing to do. And, of course, then they post pictures, so they're dressed all in white outfits, and, they're on the lawn bowling turf. And it was just really cool to see that camaraderie with the club. So very similar to what you're saying, Sean, where you're doing some event to install and recognize your new officers, which is, of course, another barrier. If you don't meet in the summer, is you have no way to really recognize that there's a new executive team in, and they're probably therefore not planning the year, and et cetera. It snowballs. Any other special things you've done? So it could be a beach, it could be a picnic, it could be a barbecue. I know, Sean, you also attended Mission Toastmasters last year, and they had an outdoor meeting as well.
Yeah, that was a blast. That was a fun meeting.
Yeah, and it looked
gorgeous view too. Got a nice view of Mount Baker, and it was a lovely park, lovely setting, and it was really nice people, and it was good to see guests come out to that one.
Yeah, it gives them a really good impression as well. The other thing that you could do is consider just changing the theme. If it's challenging for whatever reason to do outdoor meetings or change it up, social venues, that type of thing, is just make the themes interesting or exciting or something worthy of attending. I know, for example, Jim, you're on the line, and I know you're in a corporate environment, which adds certain challenges when it comes to flexibility, and also typically with a lot of the members, they see it linked with their work, unfortunately, instead of looking at kind of the, hey, you know what, this is part of what I do at work, but it's also beneficial to me personally. So maybe it could be something to do with meeting themes that, could really attract people out or something. One of my favorite things that I do from time to time is have things like backwards meetings, or really get into themes to the point where, people are kind of curious and they're like, I want to come and see what this is about. Instead of table topics, doing debating, something along those lines that really just switch things up and make people curious, because that will get them to come out as well. It's hard to compete with the weather conditions sometimes, but if there's anything that you can do to get people excited, then by all means take advantage of that. Any other ideas on that? Got a message here. Oh, Jim's mentioned that was a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, what I was thinking is I could tie it to like trade shows that are coming up. Say, hey, anyone want to prepare their table topic type speeches or short improvisational speeches that they anticipate giving to key customers or whatever, so they're ready for the trade show, or if they're going to visit a customer's site and they want to anticipate certain types of questions they may get put on the spot to ask. That might be a great way to keep people motivated and keep it connected to work.
Absolutely. And that's something that, Toastmasters has in the brand manual as well, just for your information, some elevator pitches. And of course, it's about Toastmasters, but you could take those examples and, say, hey, this is kind of what I'd say about Toastmasters. Now, what would we say about our organization? And kind of have some sort of maybe a contest where you're maybe that's what Table Topics is. It's here's what's your 2-minute spiel at the trade show, and people are getting up and being creative and finding ways to get the customers excited that way.
Well, to that point, I'm going to put a plug for the My Why program, the My Why campaign that Toastmasters International is doing, and something that the company I work for is doing, and they've got a variation on My Why, and they want the employees to put forward a hashtag photo, not a speech, although we did do one earlier in the year where they wanted us to do a mini speech on what our story is, essentially what our elevator pitch is. If you're meeting a customer or meeting just a business person, you meet them on an airplane and just be able to do it very quickly, succinctly, 30-second to a 1-minute maximum elevator pitch. But I just ran 2 programs at 2 different clubs with the My Why, and it was a lot of fun. The first club had like 25 members, and they had 10 people step up at the last minute to do a My Why video recorded and posted those to, we're posting those to Facebook sites. So they all agreed to do that. And I did one at a smaller club that has that's right now at 18 members. We just had a quorum at the meeting for our elections on Thursday night. And we were able to get 6 people stepping up to do a My Why video. So I was pretty impressed. So I think people have started to realize how much fun it is to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fun to explore the Toastmasters elevator pitches, and that's regardless what kind of club you're in, whether it's community, advanced, corporate, any type of club, because you do run into those situations even where the topic comes up, and even if you're traveling around the world, you could certainly, if somebody for some reason the topic of Toastmasters came up, you'd want to be able to give them a sentence to help them out, because I'm sure all of you are on the line this evening because you've joined Toastmasters, you've received some benefit from the program, and therefore you've stayed in the program for a certain period of time. I'm sure we've all been around for different periods of time, and you get value out of it. So therefore, let's say you were in Croatia or something, and the topic came up. I mean, I'm certainly not saying that would be your focus when you go there, is I'm going to promote Toastmasters, but certainly having an elevator pitch ready, because I was talking about in terms of how you could translate it to work, but it's also something you could keep on the Toastmasters wavelength, or play with a little bit from the Toastmasters perspective, and use things like the My Why, because I even found myself caught this program year. I was in Hong Kong wearing my Toastmasters shirt in an elevator, literally an elevator, and somebody looked at my shirt and they said, "Toastmasters, do you work for Toastmasters?" And it was like I had like 10 seconds with this person. It was a ridiculously short amount of time, but I did not have my 10-second elevator speech ready to go. I certainly was challenged there, being given such a short amount of time with this individual on the elevator. But it is true that you do run into these situations, particularly if you're wearing a Toastmasters polo shirt around the other side of the world. I'll just mention that. So we've talked about social activities as well, but I kind of formally wanted to bring it back into the conversation as well, and just think about some of the different things that have come up, and kind of make sure they're all fresh in our mind. So bowling had come up a little bit earlier, the idea of not just regular like 10-pin or 5-pin bowling, but lawn bowling even. You could say beach day, lake day, whatever it happens to be. What other types of social activities have you maybe done with your club? Thinking more on the summer front, but it never hurts to have other ideas as well. I mean, a movie night is something that you could potentially do as well. Hopefully you're not doing that in the summer and you're taking advantage of the weather, but it's a possibility.
Well, this is Sean again. One of the things we did besides having the picnic, and the picnic seems to always be one of the core things, so we can do that in a park and set up a barbecue and do that. But one of the things we did for those people who wanted a little bit more adventure, something more interesting, is we went to go-kart track, an outdoor go-kart track, and that was one of the optional advance opportunities or things to do, and that was fun. But another thing we did, this was not a club that I belonged to, but I was invited to go to something that was done by, I think it was Ambassadors, did something in White Rock on the beach, and they had had a meeting on the beach, and it was on a Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember which day of the week it was. This was a few years ago, and Margaret Page was there. She was a member of that club, and she was there, and they had speeches and evaluations and table topics all on the beach, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that's kind of more like doing the club meeting on the beach. It sounds like. Yeah. Okay. Any other activities that people have experienced or think would be really beneficial to do with your club if you guys have that kind of culture going where people are open to spending a little bit of time outside the Toastmasters meeting together? Nothing. Uh-oh. There's got to be some things you guys can do. I'm even thinking you could go to some sort of historical site or something. I'm thinking back, Sean, to recently we had our District 21 annual conference, and one of the things that your spouse did was take Daniel Rex, our Chief Executive Officer's spouse, to Fort Langley. At least that was my understanding. I think they went there, didn't they? That was their plan.
Yes, they did. Sorry, I had to go off of mute. Yes, they did, and they had a lovely visit.
Yeah. So things like that, even to say, hey, you know what? As a club, why don't we go to Fort Langley or wherever it happens to be, of course, based on where your club is geographically located. That's something that I think would be kind of fun. I'm into that type of stuff. So for me personally, I'd be interested in that. But I'm also thinking too, I know Lisa is on the line here. I know you're on mute, but I was just going to mention that being in Vernon, you also have easy access to lakes. So you may do some lake activities. Maybe the club could potentially decide, hey, we're going to rent a houseboat and have a party or something on the houseboat, or we're going to try some crazy water skiing or something. I don't know. I know Sean wanted to take the core team bungee jumping, and we still haven't done that, Sean.
Yeah, I know that. I really would. By the way, there is a club that Finding Vino, that enjoys wine, and I would love to do a wine tasting thing with a club. But not everyone drinks wine, so you might do a food tasting, because a lot of clubs do food. So it's just a variation on a picnic is to have an indoor picnic and have an open house where you bring in lots of food. Right. Maybe a cultural thing where you have food from different cultures, especially if you have a diverse membership.
That's true. Yeah, you could make that specific, intentional. Yeah, and wine tasting is fine. Once again, it's not something that you need to make every member of the club has to go. When I talk about social activities like this, I'm saying this is something outside your club meeting. So you're not necessarily saying, this week we're going to do our Toastmasters meeting at this winery. No, you may say, you know what, we're going to rent one of those, at least, I don't know if you have them everywhere here, but I know on southern Vancouver Island, and I'm sure in the interior, there's some buses you can get, and they'll take you to a number of wineries for a day, basically. So you could say, hey, let's do this. Who wants to join? And if some people don't, drink wine, they don't have to join. It's optional, or they could come along potentially for the bus ride or whatever, and just not partake in the wine tasting itself. Totally up to them, right? And that's just another way, though, to build some relationships if that's something that you're into. And
I'll tell you, if anyone wants to have a wine tasting thing, I'm more than willing to attend.
That sounds better than the bungee jumping, to be honest with you, because I was totally put off when you said you wanted to do that in your birthday suit. So.
Yeah, but wine tasting, as long as you don't take us to Divine Wines.
That's another story that we'll have to share on a candid experience through the program year as a team. I want to put it out there for everybody that I probably took our district director to the worst winery in, I would say BC, but I suspect it's the world. So anyways, we'll have to talk about that sometime, but not for this conversation. I saw this come up in the chat, and it just so happens this was the next topic, joint meetings or doing banner raids. And this is a good way to build even better community as a group of Toastmasters, instead of, just, oh, we're going to do our thing, and we've got, 5 people that want to show up. Let's say you had 2 clubs that met next to each other that have the same problem. Well, all of a sudden you combine forces, you've got 10 people. So either you do it as a banner raid where you're going to steal their banner, the rules generally for that, or you need to take 5 Toastmasters to another club, from your club to another club, and they're able to take that other club's banner, and they have to send people back to recover their banner. So it's a way to go see another club's meeting, you take their banner back, and then they have to come and see you. So it's a nice way to build a relationship with those clubs, but it's also a nice way for your members to see how another club operates, and their members to see how your club operates. And the beauty of this is maybe your club is going through a difficult period, and maybe that's a really strong club. So you are kind of encouraging your folks to go and see that really strong club, and the members may be inspired to say, hey, we want to perform like they do. Or it could be the opposite, where you're in a stronger club right now. You've seen this club has fallen out of luck a little bit with their membership or whatever happens to be going on. You go and you're giving them some support. In fact, I know in District 96, that's something that Louisa has started doing, and it's amazing the ideas you see different people come up with. They're actually doing it kind of formally, kind of arranged by the district, where they go and work with a club to organize an open house. They've got a bunch of members that are willing to go to that club's open house and help fill seats, basically take on roles, fill seats. And that way, when those guests come in, they see, oh, this is a full room, it's got high energy, lots going on, rather than maybe the low energy and struggles that the club has been going through. So that gets people to sign up on the spot, and then they have more members. So then they're able to kind of rebuild and spawn out of that. So obviously a little easier for District 96 as well, because they primarily, the majority of the divisions are in the Vancouver, Burnaby kind of area, which means, for District 96 being less spread out than District 21, generally speaking. They've got a very large division as well, that's Northern BC and Yukon. But for District 21, it's logistically a little more challenging, but I'd like to see if maybe down the road we can make that happen as well, because that would be cool. So that was a sidebar, but in terms of joint meetings, being purposeful about it, instead of making it a raid, you could also just say, hey, you know what, why don't we pool our resources and let's do a meeting together. And you can just make that really fun then, where somebody's a Toastmaster and it doesn't matter which club they're from, and you're just working together to make that whole meeting even a better experience. Once again, gives the guests a better experience then as well. And the members will have a lot of fun because they'll get to meet some new friends. Has anybody had a chance to do these joint meetings?
No, but it sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, and do you have anybody, any clubs that meet really close to you, Jim?
No, I was just thinking about that. We're in an industrial area near the Alex Fraser Bridge, and there's got to be something nearby.
Yeah, so that's out in East Richmond then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's not something nearby, we'll have to start one. That's a solution. Yeah. We'll have to look into that and see if that's a possibility. Or even, you know what, you could say, just to give some of your members a different experience, you could say, hey, you know what, we're going to go into Richmond, like the kind of town center, I guess you could call it, where a number 3 there, and go to one of the clubs that meet even in the evening there. And of course, not everybody may want to partake, but some people may be willing to, give it a shot for, one-off, just to see what they do differently and take the ideas back. So there's never harm in that. Nobody's got a gun to anybody's head, so they don't have to go if they don't want to, but it's always cool to check out other meetings.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely a good idea.
Well, and for the corporate clubs in East Richmond, or where Jim is, there's a whole bunch of corporate programs that are out there. Not quite as far east as they are, but you don't have to go far. Just 6th Road, and there's half a dozen clubs.
Oh yeah, that's not too far then. I'm going to pretend to have expertise in Richmond. I sometimes, actually, I think pretty much consistently, I don't take GPS when I drive in Richmond anymore. So I think I'm getting better in Richmond. Surrey or Langley, I'm still in trouble, but Richmond, I'm okay.
Me too, and I live in that area now.
Yeah. I know the streets are numbered, but coming from Victoria, we don't do numbered streets. I'm confused by numbers. And I work in numbers, so I don't want to admit that out loud. All right. Moving right along here. Executive meetings. This is the point I wanted to make with executive meetings was not just having them, because that is important, but also this is a good time of year to be planning. The program year ends on June 30th. July 1st, you begin a brand new program year, and you want to have that visualization of where am I going to be on June 30th the following year. It's really critical that we do this because your club can accomplish anything it wants to. If you don't have a plan, it's going to accomplish whatever happens. But if you purposely say, and I've seen this happen in clubs before, that say, you know what, I want to have 50 members. Now, that's probably a little excessive, and that would be more of like a competition with yourself more than anything. But if you want to be a really good club and you've got excitement going on, you could say, I want to have a club with 30 members that's doing 3 speeches every single week, and we are going to do a social event every quarter. You can do that. There is nothing that says you can't do that other than you not having that plan. So that's the time of year to do it. And you can do those meetings in an informal setting as well. I remember I think I was the incoming president for one of my clubs and was invited by the person that was outgoing to their home to actually go and have kind of a barbecue type thing. And we just talked about, okay, this is things that went well this year, and these are some things that we could do to improve the club even more. And the other thing that we did is in May each year, we would do a Moments of Truth in the club. And that way we could hand the Moments of Truth results to the incoming executive and say, hey, this is what's happening. These are some areas that were identified by the club to work on. And the new team can start working on a plan and a calendar for the year from there. So that's just something that I wanted to encourage everybody to think about is regardless, this is kind of separate from your club meetings, the executive or the kind of the 7 officers of the club, even if your club decides to stop meeting for the summer, which I strongly encourage you not to, your executive team needs to be meeting. I think that is a critical thing. If you don't have a vision of where you're going to find a lot of surprises in September with renewals. And of course, without a plan for who's going to get educational awards, you don't stand a shot at being distinguished, unfortunately. So those are executive meetings. So just to kind of summarize the benefits of meeting in the summer, you've got more opportunities to participate. You may have more free time, and of course that's going to depend on your role. You've got a chance of doing some outdoor activities. You don't lose momentum, which is probably the biggest threat you have when you reduce or stop meetings in the summer. And you can get ahead of the curve in your success for the program year. That's you individually in your educational program, but also the club in terms of being aware of where they need to go by June 30th and increasing membership and getting members educational awards and just being a thriving club that's full of energy, full of fun, and that results in learning. So that is what I have, but I certainly want to take any questions or thoughts if anybody has them. I know we're just a couple minutes early, which is not a bad thing, of course. I know we postponed this to be a little bit later to make sure that people had a chance to spend time with their families if they had any family activities to do today as a result of Mother's Day. But I certainly welcome any last comments, thoughts, anything that you want to talk about before we wrap up.
Great job running this presentation. I really appreciate the effort you put into this. Thank you so much for continuing to do this week after week.
Thank you. Yes, it's definitely been a unique experience trying to do these weekly. It's a commitment, that's for sure. And thanks, Jim. Anything else?
Especially when people bail out at the last minute.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time out to join this session, and I am definitely open anytime if people want to reach out to me with questions or thoughts or ideas, whether that be about summer meetings or anything else for that matter. I want to make sure that you have a good experience in your club, and therefore your club is having a good experience and is a thriving educational place to be, as well as a good spot to get to know, coworkers and community members. Thanks again for joining, and we will hopefully see everybody next week. Take care.